Well, thank you very much for having me. And thank you, Jeanette and Amy, for getting us off to a fabulous start. I don't have any research and I don't have a book, but what I am going to share with you is my leadership motto, if you will, that I've learned and sort of developed over the years, and kind of my way of thinking about how to really lead authentically and do that so you can be resilient and thrive through change. So my motto is to be real. And that starts with being yourself, being authentic to who you are. And that's easy to say. Lots of people sometimes struggle with, who they want to be or what they want to do for a job, and maybe taking too much input from others, right? I guess it starts with just being authentic to who you are, what you want to be, and really importantly, and this is what I want to talk about, how you do it. Many of us are in environments where we feel like we have to adapt and change the environment all the time. And of course, there's always some amount of that. But what I've learned over the years is that you can be much more successful if you can be authentic to yourself and do things in a way that plays to your strengths. So let me share my first story. One of the best questions I ever asked in my entire career was many years ago, probably 17 or maybe 12, 15 years ago, I guess. I was being asked to lead at the time one of Accenture's biggest businesses. It was our North America technology business. And the gentleman that asked me to take on this role was telling me, what he wanted me to do, what the job was, et cetera. And I knew in the back of my head, I was a little bit of a left field candidate. But there were many other people at Accenture that people would just naturally think were probably more apt or adept to take that role. And so this was going through the back of my head of I wonder why he's asking me to take this role. I'll be the first woman on the North America leadership team. I'm not a technologist. I'm a salesperson and a client person. I've been running a P&L, and he wants me to run this $10 billion business where I'm going to have to develop all these offerings. I have all these people reporting to me. I wonder why he wants me to do this. So I just decided to ask him. I said, why me? And the reason I'm asking is because there's things about me that you want to show up every day, and I want to make sure those things show up. And the reason this is one of the best questions I've ever asked in my career, and I continue to do that today, is because it gave me a tremendous amount of confidence. What he wanted me to do in this role were all the things I was good at. He wasn't actually worried about the fact that I wasn't the kind of person that was going to geek out on technology, and that I wasn't the person that was going to write some sort of blog or some sort of point of view about the latest and greatest technology. What he said to me is, I need your leadership capabilities. I need you to fire up this team. I need you to help make this business more client relevant. I need you to help make this a place everyone wants to be, everyone wants to work. And I need you to help figure out what the future is for technology at Accenture. So this gave me tremendous confidence, and it allowed me kind of the mental space and confidence to lead in the way that I like to lead. So my first leadership meeting, I was meeting with this team, and I knew that in the back of their minds, they were also wondering, why Shelly? Why was Shelly chosen for this role? And I also knew that my leadership style was a little different than what this team was used to. And it took a big risk. What I did is I had 2 working lunches. The first day I had people from our organization come in and tell us what it was like to be part of this North America technology team. And the second day, I gave each person on my new leadership team a stack of personalized note cards. Every single one of them was different. I had them specially made for each person. And I asked them to simply take an hour and write thank you notes, write congratulation notes, congratulate somebody for a promotion, for a new baby, thank them for a project, reach out to somebody that you haven't talked to in a little while. And I was taking a big risk. I wasn't sure how this team was going to react to that. And now learning from Jeanette, the G factor, I understand why actually after a awkward moment of silence, or maybe 10 minutes of silence, all of this sudden, I unleashed this amazing thing in this new team of mine. They all enjoyed it. And you can imagine what, a stack of 24 cards times 15 new direct reports. Imagine how many people we touched that day by just showing some gratitude. And I've just loved this G factor, Jeanette, because it's always been something that's been part of my leadership style. And I've never quite understood sort of the science behind it, I suppose. in terms of why it works. And so I encourage all of you to lean in to what Jeanette shared with us earlier. So that's the first part. Be real, be authentic to who you are, play to your strengths. I'll tell you one other story, and then I'm going to give you the meaning of each of the letters of real. I had a woman once call me, and she was was wanting to be promoted to partner at Accenture. And she called to give me some advice. And she said, Shelly, this gentleman that she worked for, he says I need to be a bigger jerk. Only he didn't use the word jerk. He used a much worse descriptor there. And she said, I'm trying to learn how to be a bigger jerk and a better jerk. And I said, why in the world would you spend your time on that? You're never going to be effective at being a jerk. In fact, he's not that effective at it either. But he's more effective at it because it's more authentic to who he is. This is never going to work for you. That's not who you are as a leader. And I'll never forget the day, about a month, 2 months later, she called me and she said, that she had learned to lean into her leadership style, which was actually quite opposite of the gentleman that she was working with. And what a difference that made for her, because it did actually relax her brain. It relaxed her as a person and let her just be who she was and lean into her strengths. So that's the first part. Be yourself, be authentic to who you are, know your strengths, and play to your strengths. Now there's a little more to this.
Shelly, I'm going to quickly ask you to pause here. I think we're seeing the notes on the side as well.
Oh, you are?
We're not in the presenter mode, so just wanted to flag that.
Got it. All right. That doesn't work either, huh? Again.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I had this figured out here.
I think we go
Don't
to
really even need class. Can I just stop sharing? Let's just talk. How's that? There we go. Have I stopped sharing? I really apologize.
Yes.
Okay. So the R, this is easy. Real only has 4 letters. So the R, what does the R stand for? It stands for being relevant. So one of the things I've learned over the years is being relevant can take many different forms. Sometimes being relevant is about what you know. It's about an experience you bring to the table. It's about something you know about a particular topic. It's about your functional expertise. It's about your technology expertise. It's about something you know. Other times being relevant is actually just about who you can connect, creating connectedness of the team. Sometimes being relevant is just about bringing somebody else to the table. Sometimes being relevant is just about a relationship that you might have, that you might be able to bring to bear. Sometimes being relevant is just about being available and open to your team. But one thing certainly about these days, every business is going through change. Every person is going through change. It takes effort to stay relevant. And so it's something to think about, which is what makes you relevant. And by the way, what makes you relevant to a company, maybe in certain circumstances, something different makes you relevant. And think about that with your teams and help your teams and the members of your team understand what makes them relevant. What makes them relevant to a certain situation? Maybe that's the because part of thanking somebody, as Jeanette said. Thank you for this. This was an amazing contribution because this is how you are relevant to the situation. This helps people because it helps them understand it makes them feel valued, and it helps them understand how they can continue to be relevant. So the R stands for being relevant to your team, to your company, to your customers. Maybe you want to take that into your personal life, to your family, to your friends. How do you be relevant? The E stands for being empowered. And my sort of mindset has always been, it's just best to feel empowered and assume you can solve any problem. You can go after any opportunity. That may or may not, by the way, be part of your job description. I always like to say there's the job you're asked to do, and then there's the job you choose to do. Now, almost in every company, in every situation, you have to do the job you're hired for. There's no doubt about that. But so many people hang back from an opportunity to do more because they're not sure if that's going to be welcomed. Most environments welcome people who can go above and beyond or venture into a new area as long as they can be relevant. So part of this be real mindset for me is about feeling empowered, always feeling empowered yourself, but also making your teams feel empowered. One of the mistakes I think a lot of managers and leaders make over their careers is feeling like to be a good manager or be a good leader, they have to know everything that's going on. And they don't mean to micromanage their team, but they feel like to be relevant, they need to know about everything that's going on. Take that out of your mind. If you're building a team and you're empowering a team, the mindset ought to be the team is solving problems and going after opportunities I don't even know about. I have such an empowered team that is so relevant that there's so many good things happening. I can't possibly keep track of all of them. I don't need to keep track of all of them. That's why I'm empowering my team. I want them to go after opportunities and solve problems before I even know they exist. So for me, that's the essence of being empowered yourself and absolutely empowering your team. So now it leads us to the A. So the A is about being accountable. So it's one thing to be empowered and be able to feel like you can, you could certainly, you want to be empowered to take some risks, to do some new things. But of course you have to be accountable. You have to be accountable for who you are. You have to be accountable for your actions in all cases, right? It's always better to take an attitude of do the right thing always. Like you cannot compromise on your principles. You have to be accountable for your actions and who you are. And as a leader, you have to take accountability for your team. And this sometimes is a really hard thing for people as they get into leading bigger teams and organizations, because it's very easy to sit back and say, even though it's somebody on your team, to try and hold them accountable, or to say, yeah, so-and-so messed up, or yeah, so-and-so did that. It's a much better leadership mindset and principle to take accountability for your team, right? Now, you have to hold them accountable as well. You have to hold people accountable for what they need to do and for their actions. But you also, as a leader, have to take accountability for the environment that you create and accountability for the team overall. And by taking accountability for the team, you empower them. You empower them to take some risks here and there. You empower them to go after opportunities. You empower them to solve problems without being worried about, sort of being left out to dry, if you will. So the A is about being accountable. And the L stands for learning. Always, always, always learning. And this one, I think it's a lot of talk, and a lot of people talk about being, Satya Nadella talks about being a learn it all. I love that term, right? That goes at all levels of your career and all levels of an organization, by the way. And people learn differently. I personally, yes, I do read. Yes, I read. I stay up on what's happening in the, in the news and certain technology topics, et cetera. And I read things. I personally am more of an experiential leader. I lead through talking with people. I learn through talking with people. And so for me, a big part of my learning routines is about how I interact with people, doing a lot of one-on-one meetings, meeting with people around an organization. I usually bring what I call a surprise guest to every big meeting. I bring a marketing person when we're talking about a finance topic. I bring a technology person when we're thinking about a marketing idea. Why? Because we all learn from each other when we create an environment where you bring different perspectives. So that's how I personally learn. But one of the things I would say is it's so easy to get caught up in day-to-day, your to-do list, your work list, your business results, whatever it is you're working on, that the learning thing just gets put aside. So one of the things that Amy was talking about earlier too is about having to change your routines. And so I would encourage each of you to think about, what is your learning routine? What are your routines for learning? Is it that you put an hour on your calendar every Friday for you to go learn about some topic that actually is just of interest to you? You don't need it for your job. It just keeps you mentally alert and interested. Is it about having 2 meetings every week with someone who you don't know in an area that would be good for you to understand about the business that you're in, but you don't really have a reason to necessarily engage with them, but you can learn from them? There's so many different things you can do to establish learning routines, but you really, really, really have to create those routines so you can always be learning. The other thing is, if you want to create an organization that's always learning, you have to create routines for the organization. And my favorite routine for this, and then you have to create a mindset, because a lot of organizations don't appreciate learning. They don't appreciate those mistakes, if you will. Again, I like to call that always learning. So one of the routines I found to be the most successful here is to adopt to at every status meeting, at every maybe client check-in, every time you're interacting with your team, is to stop for a minute and say, okay, what have we learned since last time we talked about this topic? What have we learned? Let's go around the room. What have we learned? Okay, now what are we going to do differently? What are we going to do differently because of what we learned? And this is a very, very powerful thing. It's very simple to do, But it begins to not only train an organization about learning and changing, it begins to create this learning mindset for everyone around you. So there you go. Be real, be yourself, know your strengths, play to your strengths, be authentic to who you are. You don't have to lead the way somebody else leads, and stay relevant, be empowered, take accountability, and find those routines. You can always, always, always be learning. And Pragya, with that, I will stop and hand it back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like I'm going to steal some of these already, at least with my team. So we have about 3 minutes. Any questions from the audience? A lot of great talk. Love the topic. No questions so far, but I actually do have one. How do you, I love the idea of holding yourself and the team members accountable. But while doing that, you allow folks to take some risks. And what happens when those risks don't land up the way you wanted it to? How do you handle that? Yes, there's a learning from there, but how do you create that, I guess, psychological safety for people to be able to take the risk in the first place?
I think it starts with the decision to take the risk, right? The conversation you have around that, which is to recognize that we're going to do something a little different here. Not sure exactly how this is going to work out. If things go well, it'll feel like this. If things don't, these things, risks play out. Here could be the consequences of that. And making sure, just having that conversation that says we recognize there's some risk here. That's the first piece. The second piece then is, I think, you have to kind of, depending on how big of a risk or how big of a decision, you got to have those check-ins so you don't let something get out of control, right? And be able to have those brave conversations. Says, how's it going? You know what? We don't know yet. We don't know if this risk is going to play out or not. Or hey, it turns out this isn't a big deal and we can manage the risk. But then when things maybe don't go the way that you planned, if you've had that conversation where you recognize that up front, it's much easier than to have that discussion that says, okay, we knew this was a risk. Here's what we're going to do to learn. Here's what we're going to do to deal with the consequences, if there are some. And we're going to sit and talk enough about what we learned and what we can do differently for next time, that everybody feels like it was a learning, not a complete failure.
Great, agreed. Thank you for that. And we do have a couple of questions. The first one, what does resiliency mean to you?
I think to me, it means being able to thrive in different environments. So that could be different companies, it could be different jobs or opportunities or different teams inside the same company. And it also means being able to deal with those not as fun times or difficult times or stressful times or times of change, using some of the things that Amy taught us maybe as an example, but whatever it is for you personally, to have that resiliency and to just have that confidence about leaning into your strengths and being who you are and being able to be authentic to who you are and not trying to lead like someone else.
I love that. I love that. And we have one last question. Any suggestions on how to encourage learning with an organization that does not have a culture of growth mindset?
Yeah. I think language is a big thing, right? And so maybe, setting some things up that says, hey, I want to learn about this topic. Anybody else want to learn about this topic? Hey, and just trying the question, what did we learn from this last time? What might that mean? Having that discussion creates a culture more than anything. And I think you just sort of have to find ways to get started. It might be a smaller group. Maybe you can't have that with your management team, but these things tend to pick up momentum in organizations. And language is a big deal.
I absolutely love that. So with that, we're at 2:00. This was a great session. Thank you, Jeanette, Amy, and Shelly. It was absolutely wonderful to have you all here.